Are we ready? We good? At this time, the mayor will call to order the regular city council meeting for 6 p.m. Tuesday, September the 12th of 2023. City Council Chambers, 201 East Nash Street, Terrell, Texas. We have with us in the chambers District 2, Grady Simpson. District 3, Mayrani Velasquez, Mayor Pro Tem. We have District 4, Stephanie Holmes Thomas, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem. And we have District 5, Phil Robinson, and our staff. At this time, I would ask that Pastor Timothy Bowles with the Family Community Church come forward. And if you would come to the mic. Is he here? Come back. Come. And if you would please stay after the flags, and I have a little presentation for you, all right? So if everyone would please rise and stay standing for the pledges. Oh, prayer. Go ahead and do the prayer.
Oh, go with the prayer? Oh, hey. I thought you was going to do a pledge of allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to pray for this great city and these great leaders here in this city. Father, I lift up each and every council member, mayor tonight, all the administrators, and I lift them up and just lead and guide them as they make very important decisions for our community. And Father God, we just thank you for each and every one of them, Lord. And most of all, we invite you into this council meeting tonight, Lord Jesus, and help us make the decisions you'd want us to make. And I pray all these things in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. All right, Pastor, I'll be right with you.
Good to see you. How you doing? Good to see you.
Bowles, I just want to say thank you for all you do for our community, especially the faith-based community here in town, and we appreciate it very much. We are celebrating 150 years, our sesquicentennial this year. And on behalf of the mayor and the council, we'd like to present you with a coin, commemorative coin. It's a challenge coin. We challenge you to continue to do well for the city of Terrell. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So next on the agenda is mayor, council, community recognitions, and events. I want to take a moment and thank our staff, our fire department, Chief LaCroix, for them putting together the program yesterday for 9/11. If you've not been able to attend that, maybe next year you can, and it's an opportunity to thank all of the first responders that work within our city, and also to pay tribute and honor those who sacrificed their lives on that day on 9/11, 22 years ago. So it was a good ceremony, and thank everybody who was there. Does anybody have any recognitions? No, hearing none. We'll move on to hear remarks from visitors. Oh.
Can we let Allison do one?
Yes, please come forward.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a few things. I dropped most of this information in your boxes, but I think each of you were invited to the Terrell Heritage Society History of Terrell Schools exhibit and reception. It's this Thursday night. I did confirm that this is really by invitation only, but they will open it up to the general public. But it's 4 to 7 this Thursday night at the Heritage Museum. And then we keep reminding y'all about Saturday's mural walk and the art show. The art show will be at the Lyric. And I also put this in your boxes. This is an updated list of all the artists that will be participating that day. That evening, there will be the Monte Carlo night hosted by the BFTS. And I did get a note just now from Bill Hutmaker saying that the fly-in and the chicken drop had been canceled due to the inclement weather forecast. And then the last thing is an information session at Terrell State Hospital in regards to their building project. That is scheduled on October 3rd from 6 to 7, and that is in the middle of TML. So I do plan to attend. If you have any specific questions you would like addressed, if y'all can call me or email me with those, then I'll be happy to see if I can get answers to any of that. And also, I understand our mayor is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
That is on October 13th, I believe.
I think
Is that
so.
right?
Yes.
So there will be a luncheon, followed by a reception, and then that evening there will be an on-the-field ceremony. So
Yeah, we didn't have to
Congratulations.
mention that, but that's, thank you.
Yes.
Real quick,
It's not for, because he was a great athlete, it's for the nerdy stuff, like academics or something like that.
it did not specify whether it was the nerdy stuff or his athletic ability, so I don't know. I'll have to ask him.
hey, real quick though, go over for the council the coloring of the mural
Okay.
that we can participate in, because I think
Yes.
each one of you, if you have an opportunity to go by there, really cool. I took my grandson, and you get a chance to participate in putting up a mural, and I guess it will stay there?
It will stay there.
Okay.
So this year, it's on, at Adelaide and South Alley. It's right by Side Street. I got an email earlier today from Julie. She is one of Becca's part-time employees, and she graciously has volunteered to do this, and she has to do it in the evening when it's dark. So she's really, and it's a really rough wall, but she has done a wonderful job. So if you would like to come by that day, there will be volunteers out there. It's kind of like doing paint by number, and you can pick a color and pick as large or small of a space as you want to do, and then just paint. And hopefully by the end of the day, we will have a completed mural. So it's real nice if y'all want to go by and look at it.
Yeah, and it's fun for everybody too.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any community recognitions or events? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 5, which is to hear remarks from visitors. Do we have any? We do not have any, so we'll move on to item 6, which is adoption of the minutes. Discuss and consider the minutes of the regular city council meeting on September the 5th of 2023. Is there a motion on item 6.1?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes from September 5th.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Have a motion from Phil Robinson, District 5, a second from Grady Simpson, District 2, to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting of September the 5th of 2023 as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous vote of those present. Our next item on the agenda, discuss upcoming calendars. This is going to be handled by our City Secretary, Don Stahl.
Mayor and council, the September and October calendars are in your packet. If you'll note, on Tuesday, September 26th, we will not be having a council meeting that night. There will be a special city council meeting on Friday, September 29th at 12 p.m. at City Hall. And in October, we will not have a meeting on the 3rd of October or the 31st of October. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Don? All right, thank you, Don. Next item on the agenda is item 8, discuss and consider development agreement for 1118 South Medora Street. This is handled by Omar Ramada.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you, we have coming back to you is the development agreement for 1118 South Medora. On your screen, this is a property that we're talking about, Lot 45 and Lot 46. These two lots, they're two separate lots currently, two 25-foot lots that the owner would like to replat and make it into one lot. So with the agreement, they would be granted a variance to get a new lot for a 50 by 172. So that's a deep lot there. On the screen, you'll see the proposed site plan that does follow along with all the requirements in the agreement, and they have turned in an elevation drawing for the proposed home that they would like to put on there. Just as a reminder, the owner does have an option to go before ZBA to allow the decrease in the lot width for the minimum lot size, which it does not meet. Our minimum lot width is 65 for the lot width, and this one would only be 50. They also requested a decrease from 2,000 square feet to 1,550 square feet on the lot. The second option is the one before you, that is to your discretion in order to allow for the development agreement to move forward, to allow the variance for the 50-foot lot, as well as the decrease in the home size. The owner is here with us today, Mr. Anthony. We've worked with him, and he has his team here as well, and in support of this, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Again, just to clarify, if they go to ZBA, then there's no development agreement associated with this property.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for
Yes,
our?
this is just only one single home, correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir. It will be one single-family home.
Okay, sounds good.
Anybody else?
So by doing it this way, we can just make the decision to allow builder to build on this lot with the development agreement and with all the variances that's necessary and needed as far as the square footage and the lot size being smaller.
That's correct. What the agreement is doing is you are signing, allowing the owner to give those variances in return for those enhancements that are in the agreement. Yes, ma'am.
You already decided to
Sounds good.
BA.
And Omira, from the last council meeting that this item was presented, I see that there are no, can you confirm what I'm seeing, that there are no changes to the item as it was presented during the last meeting?
That is correct. There were no changes to the item as presented last time.
Okay, thank you. All right, this is a discuss and consider. Is there a motion on the development agreement for 1118 South Medora Street?
Mayor, this is item 8.1.
Yes.
Yes, Mayor, I motion that we approve item 8.1 for 1118 South Medora Street.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion from Grady Simpson, District 2, a second from Mayrani Velazquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3, to approve the development agreement for 1118 South Medora Street as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries with unanimous vote of those present. Our next item on the agenda is 8.2, discuss and consider agreement of plans, specifications, and estimates for Los Lomas and US 80. This is going to be handled by our city engineer, Chris Knapp.
Council and Mayor, bring for you tonight this agreement and plans and specifications on this Los Lomas. Is this working?
Go, I think you have to go up and down.
Okay. So what this is, I'm going to give you oriented of where we're talking about location-wise so you can get oriented on geographically. So the blue line is actually 557, and the green at the bottom is I-20. And as you see, the yellow and the orange, where it's Sage Hill kind of cutting through there, that's where the projected where Sage Hill is going. You'll see another line that kind of darts off to the left, and that's going through the projected Eastland Park area that does the potential. The area that we're bringing to you tonight is the engineering relative to the top of the page, where you see the pink and the yellow line together. And in that, what we're bringing is all this package here presented by Kimberly Horn that has all the agreement for all the professional services of doing all the design work for extending Los Lomas Road, as we all know it, right as it turns onto Apache, to go further north, and then having a bridge over 80 with a bottleneck back down to 80. So that's part of our thoroughfare plan. This is just doing the engineering and construction, the environmental. There's a lot of things that has to be involved in this. You see the proposal that Kimberly Horn has presented. There's many steps to this. We've broken it down. I won't go in and torture you with all the fine print. I'll get back to the back. You can go, okay, on page 37, you'll see that there's a various tasks. And we've broken these tasks out so we can keep up with exactly what's being paid. The total price of this is 1.397. That's not to exceed. And this is for the engineering services. So the intent behind this is to have all the design package together so we can have it sitting on the shelf. So at the time the design is complete, hopefully, TxDOT will say, we'll help you build it. So that's kind of the intent. So we'll do the design package behind that and then present on to the next step from there. So for some of you that's new, such as I am, and Mike can how to help me on this, but there was if you'll see on page 43, this project's already started when an agreement was done, and Steve Rogers presented this, and it was to start the professional services on getting this initiated and the feasibility of getting concept and all that. That was not to exceed $642,000. Good news is we have not spent all that. We spent approximately about $315,000 to date on that. So that I don't want to cloud the issue or say, well, here's 600 and then another 1.397. So that work will just roll right over into this, and the design work will be completed into a total package. All this road that we are presenting, it'll be done in kind of phases where there'll be a 2-lane. Now the bridge will probably be, that's been the discussion, we got to cross UP, and so that's going to be some extra curricular activity design work and discussions. But the road going to there will be basically 1 lane with 2 lanes in the middle, and then eventually it'll be 4 lanes down the road. And then when I say the bridge is either being talked into doing just 2 lanes or doing 4 lanes initially. So then we can turn it around. So that's what I have. Mike, did I
If
miss
you'll go
anything?
back up, yeah, that's all very good. And if we can just pause on that map real quick, the very first map that's a little bit further out, so it's a little bit easier to see the system here. So I would say that probably 10 years ago, Steve and I worked through with a project with the Cinecola/Iron Horse development out on the west area here. So the area where that railroad track goes through, the 80 symbol is there. That's got the badge plant on it, and it's got the aggregate material company out there. Whenever that development happened, we negotiated for the closure of County Road 305 crossing and lining up with FM 1392. Most of you who have been here for a long time know that that was basically sort of a mud road that extended through that little area. That was closed, but we retained the rights to do a railroad crossing, and those rights were relocated to this crossing point that we're showing here. We never really felt like doing an additional roadway, at-grade roadway crossing of the railroad track in US 80 at this location was the best idea. And we've been trying to work since then to figure out a strategy for a bridge crossing. And as we've been working on that, we ended up acquiring the right-of-way on the north end of the bridge. So everything you can see there is currently owned by the city of Terrell. When I say that, I mean on the north side of 80. On the south side of 80, we had acquired back about 10 years ago, 80-foot of right-of-way. We will need to extend that by about 10 feet on either side as part of this project. But what this lines up for us, and it's important to say this out loud, in order to really work our grant opportunity here, to make sure that when we build this bridge, which could be around $17 million, to really work this grant opportunity, what we'll need to do is be willing to close MetroCrest Way whenever we open this crossing. And so we've had the difficult accidents out at the corner of MetroCrest Way and the railroad tracks in the past. This would make that into a cul-de-sac, and this would allow us to get rid of our, I'm sorry, I should say it this way. It would allow us to trade our at-grade railroad crossing permission for the old 305 and our existing MetroCrest Way crossing, and then get a grant to build this bridge. So if we have the engineering ready and we have railroad crossings to negotiate with, that usually can line you up with a state or federal grant to get all or part of the construction money necessary for the roadway. So that's the effort that we're engaged in here, and that's the long-term plan. If I look even longer past then, we do have a thoroughfare plan, which includes taking Los Lomas all the way up to US 205, State Highway 205, State Highway 205. And so that intersection with State Highway 205 would be up close to the intersection of Griffith and 205. And that would allow for, as we've said before, a north-south bypass on the west side of the city. So that's just a little bit more background. Again, this is just one part of it, which is do the engineering so that we're ready to get a grant on the bridge project.
So I would just add, you know, working with the COG, who does a lot of the grants for the federal and state, it's huge to have a project that's already been engineered, that's design work ready, because when the funding comes down from the federal to the state to us, to the county and then to us, then they look at that. And if you've got all of your ducks in a row, then that's easy for them to say, yeah, let's go ahead and fund that. The other thing that I would say to our staff is we've done an excellent job in managing our crossings with Union Pacific and the railroad. I was approached by another mayor from another community about closing one of ours in exchange for them to get something. And I said, well, my council's not, there's no way they're gonna go for that. Even if I thought it was okay, because look, that's a huge chip to have with Union Pacific and with TxDOT when you have closings like that. So this is gonna take us an advantage. It gives us an opportunity to have a loop around the city for congestion, and I think it's a good project and all for it. But y'all have any questions for Chris?
Okay, I heard Mr. Sims talk about MetroCrest. Is that road right by, like, Renfro's?
No, ma'am, it's
Where's
further on
Metro
down.
Crest?
It's further on down.
Next
Not the one with the traffic light, but further on down.
Concrete.
You know, the one with the.
Oh, yeah, near, close to
donut.
the
Yeah.
G&S sales.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. Another question. You referred to page 43 as it relates to a deal that had been previously entered into. Okay, so that extra 327,000, are we able to shift any of that for this? Did we have any money left? Clarify that for me. I don't know if I understood that.
Well, when it was presented for 642,000. So the efforts and the funds that were utilized so far are gonna roll right over into this new force. So that what funds are remaining is just gonna go over.
So, after those funds are shifted, the balance will still be the 1,397,000?
That's what's being requested, yes, ma'am.
Where does this money come from to do the engineering? Where have we budgeted? That's already was budgeted for, in what fund? I'm trying to make sure I understand that.
Can I help you out? Go to page 98, because the Quiet Zone presentation actually happens to have the answer to your question in it. So we didn't repeat the slide, but it's on page 98. The short answer is it's county bond program funds, and back in the budget retreat in August, we talked about this reallocation. And so you can see that little chart right there that says current allocation and then the requested allocation. We were receiving $8.45 million overall from the county bond program from 2019. And as we've been trying to manage those funds and try to do our best to acquire grants, I'll just kind of go through grant opportunities here. On the Complete Streets US 80 Spur 226, that $1 million, we're working through the process to see what we can do on Spur 226, which I think is a good grant opportunity, and then also on US 80. So that $1 million is really just setting us up for, we won't get engineering work done on those, but that's setting us up to continue those dialogues with TxDOT. The Los Lomas Parkway project, total $1.9 million. The previous spending plus this new spending sets us up to do the grant that we were just talking about. And that 5.5 million sets us up to do our full engineering necessary for quiet zones. And that's why this piece of paper was in the agenda, because this is, comes back and you'll see this again for that. So it's all 2019 county bond program funding.
Chris, thank you. What is the anticipated project timeline for the services as outlined in this agreement? And along with that question, do we expect that time frame to stay within the end of the remaining of 2023 and 2024? Do we expect it to be completed by the end of fiscal year FY 2024?
24, the end of 24.
And to go back to Councilman Holmes Thomas' question, we have the estimates that we have for the continuation of this project as outlined in the county bond project proposal. The funds we already have allocated from the last professional service agreement plus the funds that are being requested today will help assure that we can complete all of the professional work through 2024.
That's correct.
And we, at this time, don't anticipate any additional funds requested. Did we incorporate any type of?
Not at all.
Chris, just real quick, thanks for the presentation. In the agreement here, is everything pretty standard as far as sort of the typical things that we do for development like this?
Yes.
There's nothing outstanding that you need to discuss at all, or anything abnormal or unusual?
No. These are all, that's why we went through, we broke all the tasks out in the previous ones in the past that are not broken out. And that's why, as you can see, every line item is pretty broken out to help distinguish and scrub each task along the way. So there's payment steps along the way.
Are these pretty standard costs for this type of engineering?
Yes, they are.
This sort of thing, but I mean, is this pretty?
Yeah, this is back to the question that several months ago we talked about. You don't bid engineering type services, but this is very standard.
Looking at the marketplace, this is kind of what it typically tends to cost in general.
Yes. We have other developments that Arboretum and things of that nature that we are involved with, the Woodlands, that we are entangled with some roads that we know the cost of. So, and we're doing Temple and MetroQuest, so we kind of have some benchmarking that we can kind of go from. But this is for the engineering to do all that.
And I'm curious of this now. Now I'm thinking, so it's not really a requirement to bid, but is it anything wrong or against the standards or municipal standards to try to see if we're getting the best competitive rates? Is anything wrong about that, or it would be concerning to our, like, ethical policy to do that? I'm just curious now.
Now, you know, typically on a project that you'll go out for an RFQ asking for qualifications, and you vet various, like the Poetry Road project that y'all are familiar with. We had several engineering firms that were involved in that. You go out for an RFQ to saying, what are your qualifications for your engineering services for this type of work? And in that process, you put together a team, and that evaluates each one of those on their credentials. You evaluate and you vet their experience, their references, their recent projects. That's a good example of how much have they been involved with doing other grant work. So that's how the engineering world type of works from that perspective. So you just vet their qualifications, and some may fall out real quick because you can find out they don't have any experience. It's just like you going to get a roofer and going, I've seen a roof, but, and then there's some that's put in 100 roofs, so you know that.
That's an interesting policy. When I just think of that, the standard, like, I don't know how new people get their feet wet. I guess you got to work with a big firm, but that's.
Well, they start off on small projects, and do small projects such as maybe some parks or some small roads in construction and get their feet in the ground and get some experience.
Thank you for going into.
You don't want to go in and you don't want to have someone build a set of bleachers, which has to be engineered, and go get the cheap engineering. You want someone that's done engineering on bleachers for a long time.
Thank you.
Same principle.
I didn't mean to take you in ditches and the weeds. It's like,
Well, and then the other thing is, we've been doing business with Kimberly Horn for a long time. And so
Yes,
they've
we have
proven
various
themselves.
projects. They're a solid company.
Right.
Very solid company.
And on time, not late, and they
Yes.
get everything that you need, so, there's value in that. All right, thank you. This is a, discuss and consider, it's an agreement, and this is a not to exceed, what number was that? 1,000,000?
397.
1,397,000? Is there a motion on 8.2?
Motion to approve an agreement in amount not to exceed $1,397,000 with Kimley Horn to provide PSNE professional services for the future interchange location of the extension of Las Lomas Parkway from Apache Trail to US Highway 80 as presented.
I have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion from Mayor Ronnie Velasquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3, a second from Phil Robinson, District 5, to approve the not to exceed amount of $1,397,000 with Kimberly Horn. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous vote of those present. Our next item on the agenda is discuss items. This is discuss professional service agreement, quiet zones, reconstruction, multiple locations. This can be handled by our downtown project manager, Raylan Smith.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. So a lot of this discussion you just had over Las Lomas, I will try to do up and down. I just wanted to make Dawn laugh real quick. So what I'm bringing to you now is the extended contract. It is, again, with Kimley Horn. They are the ones that started with our Complete Streets and Quiet Zone project 2 years ago, and much like what we discussed during the budget retreat, we have made huge strides on the quiet zone side. So just to refresh everyone's minds, these were the expenses to date as of July. So there's where you're showing how much we have spent on each one of these projects and the remaining balance based on the original issuance from Kaufman County. So to take you back through, this was the same slide that you also saw during your budget retreat. So we are down to the bottom, which is the full engineering design through environmental clearance, and that would happen fiscal year 2024. And the CRISI grant application will actually be released either in December or January. So why we're bringing this to you now is we're actually on a timeline now. We've got about 45 to 60 days of engineering work that needs to be done to prepare for the application. And so moving forward with this contract would allow them time to get that work started. A little bit of history on the Union Pacific parcels. These are just some of the things that I want to remind you that we're working through. So we have taken into account that the Union Pacific double track will eventually take place through Terrell. So we're estimating that anywhere from 5 to 10 years. We also have been working to acquire the Union Pacific parcels, which are currently under contract. They're towards the south. They're on Spur 226. We actually have acquired parcels 6 and 7, and we have letters of authorization on the parcels up closest to South Alley. And so the reason why it's important to continue to talk about these parcels is due to the double track and due to the fact that Union Pacific had canceled their lease agreement at any time, the parking along South Alley would go away. So this is in preparation to make sure that we are able to add additional parking spaces when that does occur. So that brings me to the quiet zones. Just as a reminder, we go from FM 148 all the way down to across from Terrell State Hospital. I did put the concept designs for each one of these crossings here. I also have Glenn Marshall here from Kimley Horn. He has been instrumental in getting all of this together. He was my best friend during the FRA and UP diagnostic testing. So we know I know definitely way more than I ever thought I would need to know about railroad crossings. But I did include each of the drafts or the concept designs for all of the crossings, just to let you know all of the work and detail that we're trying to work through. Obviously, these are concepts. We still have to go through the final engineering and design. This first one is FM 148, and honestly, it's one we really aren't able to touch very much. We were able to confirm with TxDOT that it did meet all of the safety and maintenance regulations for it to be included within our quiet zone once it was constructed, but this was actually engineered and will be constructed through the TxDOT project. So when you start looking at our individual streets, it's just important to note that, you know, we are addressing the sidewalks and the pedestrian safety and the connectivity on either side of the railroad tracks, and generally it goes down one block. So your sidewalks will be expanded, as well as you will have roadway improvements that will take place at each one of these crossings. Here is Bowser Circle. There's a pretty significant change in Bowser there. We had to work on that one a little bit. But that just kind of gives you the detail of Bowser. Ann Street, which is pretty basic, but you notice the same basic elements at each one of the crossings and making sure that it is pedestrian safe. Rockwall, which we are obviously still looking at the design of what that parking lot would be, but we do know what the dimensions have to be for, for our crossings and how to get the turn radius correct for those vehicles. So those are some of the things that we're having to work through there on Rockwall. All of your downtown core streets pretty much look the same. You have the sidewalks, you're connecting along South Alley, and it's moving towards more, and then also one block to the south, which is Broad Street. There's Catherine. Adelaide, the same. And then you get to Virginia, and that's where the discussion is of once this crossing would go in, we would actually close off South Alley so that we're not allowing traffic to enter Spur 226 from South Alley, but that they would have to go one block to the west, which would be there at Adelaide. Here are your Delphine Street crossings. And Gardner. The last portion, the one crossing just east of Gardner, is that private crossing that actually goes onto Hunt property. So that crossing would actually be closed as part of this and would not be included in your quiet zone. So your train horns would start there at FM 429, and then they would stop as they reached past that private crossing. So with this project, what we're proposing tonight is the actual contract. And so what this would do is it gets us all the way through engineering, and it also it will take us through the grant administration and application process for the CRISI grant. This fee estimate that's in your packet, the total is $1,992,500, and that is within the budget that I provided to you in the earlier slides, and this will get you all the way through final design and permitting after construction. So all of these design standards will go through TxDOT and also Union Pacific Railroad. So again, there's your reminder of the work that we've gone through with Kaufman County in requesting the reallocation of these funds. And this would be the contract for the actual quiet zone design.
All right, thank you. So clarify three things. It makes the crossing safer. Mm-hmm. It's handicap accessible.
Yes.
And these funds come from the Transportation County funds.
Absolutely.
Right, okay. Does anybody have any questions for Braylon?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Could you go back to
There we go.
That's Bowser Circle, Bowser.
No, here where you have your green and yellow and the orange that goes across, that is your actual, right there where the hand is, that is your actual railroad crossing. So then the roadway goes towards Moore, and then the shorter amount of green space and roadway would actually go towards Jack Evans Drive and the entrance there at Southwestern Christian College. Yes, yeah. Yeah, so you, yeah. And then the yellow would be the sidewalk, the pedestrian crossing.
I just want to get clarification on page 60. All right, are the purple areas where we're going to lease those from the UPRR?
The purple areas are the parcels that the city had put in an application for purchase.
Oh, okay.
We've been trying to buy those for some.
Evidently, that's been going on for a long time now, yeah. So in the past couple of months, we were able to close on 6 and 7.
So we haven't been able to purchase some of them?
Yes, yeah, those along there on Spur 226 towards the south. And we do have letter of authorization for all of the parcels up closest to the railroad track.
Okay,
That were
we'll
just-
be able to utilize those for parking?
Yes, ma'am.
Raylan, do we have actual data that demonstrates that, that the quiet zones are actually are safer? What does the data show specifically? Like less accidents, less pedestrian incidents?
Raylan, maybe Graham could handle that
Yeah,
one?
no.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, we have done a quiet zone study that analyzes all the crossings with their crash data. And then if you can see on a couple of those exhibits, you get points for certain safety improvements that you make at each crossing. And so, yes, so if you see here, you get points for how long the median extends from the crossing. If it extends at 100 feet, then that prohibits vehicles from crossing over and going around the arm that comes down. And so we have analyzed each of these crossings, and there's a matrix that you get a certain amount of points per crossing based on the safety improvements that you have at each crossing. And then if you accrue a certain number of points, that allows you to obtain a quiet zone in that area. And so in order to create this quiet zone for them not to sound the horn, you have to have a certain number of safety
I
improvements.
mean, as far as historical data, have we seen that quiet zones around the country have resulted in less incidents of people being struck by trains?
Yes.
And is that some data we can look at somewhere?
Yes, that is data that we can look at, and that is kind of how that I guess, formula has been derived on how many extra points that you accrue based on these safety improvements has resulted in less accidents, therefore you are allowed to have the
I guess
quiet
my
zone.
concern specifically is we have a park we're planning to construct right next to the railroad where kids will be playing, families will be out there, and we've got a train coming through making no sound. Are we putting ourselves in a position of having kids put in danger, you know?
So, good question. What I would say is, and I think it's useful to go back to the introductory slide here. If you could go back to the bigger picture one that has the railroad crossing signs on it, the plan view of all the crossings. Yeah, perfect. So this hits your question, right? So this is the issue. I got Adelaide, I got Catherine, and Francis, and those are the core three that would be close to the town square location. And so here we know we're going to have both pedestrians and automobiles going over all three of those crossings. And so what's going to happen is that you're going to have your crossing arms come down, you're going to have your flashing lights flashing, you're going to have the sound of an oncoming train, but you're not going to have the horn coming, right? So you're going to hear it coming if you're a pedestrian, but you're going to have the visual of the crossing arms, and you're going to have the visual of the flashing lights, but what you're not going to have is the actual horn itself. And so statistically speaking, this whole program was created in the late 80s, and I started administering the regional version of this thing in the 90s and the 2000s, and the notion was that whenever you do the right set of detailed engineering safety improvements that I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in, but whenever you do the right set, then that matches with Federal Railroad Administration going and checking their data and saying, yep, that's statistically safer, and so we prefer that. Because remember, we're not the decision maker in this, right? The city council actually doesn't get to say that you're taking responsibility for closing the crossing. What you do is you build these safety improvements and you make a request to Federal Railroad Administration and you say, pretty please, may we do this? They monitor it every year. Every year they monitor it, and some cities have lost their quiet zones because they changed, they put a driveway in, they took a crossing arm out, they did something, right? And Union Pacific will alert Federal Railroad Administration. Federal Railroad Administration will come out and audit it. And if it's not actually meeting the goal, they will remove that quiet zone from you. So we've tried to ask our engineering team to over-design it a bit and to try to make sure that we are really very substantially getting our safety improvements. And I think that as we play this out from, hey, these are the concepts we're showing you, to final engineering, I think you'll be able to ask that question a couple of times during this process, and we'll be able to prove it out to you that we couldn't possibly get approval from Federal Railroad Administration unless we could statistically prove it's safer.
Okay.
Yeah, and for clarity though, it's the railroad, Union Pacific and the federal government who would say this meets or exceeds the design work needed for it to be safe for pedestrians and for automobiles.
Correct.
Vehicles, right?
Yes, and when this has all been engineered and then constructed and all these improvements are in place, they come out to the field, do their inspection, and say, yes, these meets and checks all the boxes for the recommendations and regulations in order to get the quiet zone.
And the example I gave you earlier about the other mayor reaching out, it's because they took theirs away. In order to get it back, they needed a closing. And I didn't think any of y'all would go for that, so I told them no. But it's a good question. No, hey, this is what governance is. This is how we find things out, and we should be comfortable with decisions that we move forward on. When will this come back to the council? Does anybody have any additional questions for Raylan?
I do have questions
Okay.
for either. As we're looking at, the slides, the renderings for South Francis Street and South Catherine Street, I'm looking at the parking areas. Did we remove or add any additional parking along the road for South Francis or South Catherine?
So let me try to answer that because I think that's more of a big picture question. So go to the Catherine Street one. So this is a good way of thinking about this. The Federal Railroad Administration is going to be against driveway entrances on Catherine from the railroad tracks going down to Broad, okay? So we're not recommending any of those or recommending adding any of those. So the question would be, well, wait a minute, where do I enter a parking lot? We will have to design the parking on the vacant lot that we are buying from Union Pacific. We're gonna have to design that so you enter and exit it exclusively off of Broad Street, okay? You don't wanna have them entering that on off of Catherine or off of Adelaide. And you can see this also if you look at the Adelaide schematic. Notice how the Adelaide schematic is removing the driveway that goes directly off of Adelaide and accesses the old railroad depot, okay? That old railroad depot is using that parking lot. And so what's this schematic telling me? It's telling me that the sidewalk is going to go over there. They're going to close that driveway, and they're going to then add a new driveway on Broad Street so that the parking lot that's there for that old railroad depot is now accessed exclusively off of Broad Street. And so that's the kind of thinking that goes into all of the details here. And we'll have to make sure that we just coordinate the design and the engineering between new parking lots, modifying existing parking lots, and making sure that we balance those safety needs.
Right, and I understand that we're going through the process of adding some additional parking in the downtown area. My question specifically is, if we look at South Adelaide Street and we look at the lower left quadrant of this drawing, if we look right above the railroad, the yellow railroad sign, no train horn, and then the no right turn lane, is there any parking right in front that was there previously that we're removing? And those are the type of examples that I'm looking at as we're looking at South Francis, South Catherine.
My example for you there is you're probably going to lose one or two parking places at some of these crossings and able to get in the way of getting turning radiuses and sidewalks and all of that sort of thing. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if there was a parking place or so at several of the downtown locations. But remember, on those are areas where today that's a parking space being leased from Union Pacific. So when Union Pacific comes in several years from now and they double track downtown, you are going to lose that parking place anyway.
Right, and,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I understand that as well from previous presentations, but if we're not losing parking spots that are right in front of the existing businesses along the road, parking right in front of the businesses, not at this, okay, that's where.
There's plenty landscape, there's plenty for
Mhm.
existing curb. If we have to dive in, you would not lose any parking.
Thank you.
So I have
That was the specific question I had there, and I just wanted to make a point here as we're talking to our community members that South Delphine Street, as a reminder, the crossing would be closed, therefore our community members would not be able to move north or south going through South Delphine Street. They either have to take, what do I want to say, Bradshaw? Gardner, thank you. They either have to take Gardner or South Virginia Street if they, as an option.
South Virginia is a 226.
So, Councilwoman, you made me think about something. So when Union Pacific comes back through and they do double track, how's that going to affect the schematics that we have, and will it result in us losing? They've already taken that under consideration.
Yes, we've had
Okay, great.
Yes, we've had the median lengths extended to a point to where when they come back with the double tracks, that it still meets the requirements for the quiet zone points at those locations.
Okay, great.
I'm just curious of this. Is that double track so they can switch in the city, like pass, two trains can pass? What is I wonder what.
Union Pacific's goal is to have a eastbound track and a westbound track all the way from Long Beach to Shreveport. And so they're just methodically been doing that over the last several decades, and they'll get to us soon. But it's not so much for parking or passing and stuff like that as it is so that they can have the safety improvement for them of a eastbound direction and westbound direction.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Great present. So this will come back next Tuesday? Okay. Next item on the agenda is 9.2, discuss professional service agreement with South Alley Reconstruction. Again, downtown project manager Raylan Smith.
Okay, so this next one is just kind of the last piece that pulls it all together. So when we talk about Spur 226, we talk about Highway 80. We just talked about all the improvements that would take place during the quiet zone. So this is essentially the contract with Kimley Horn that it's the professional services agreement for the complete streets and quiet zone alley improvements. So what this is going to do is pick up that final design of South Alley once all of the crossings are completed through your downtown core. So this would give you connectivity from US 80, figuring out how to get over to Spur 226, and then also making sure that South Alley is in alignment as a complete infrastructure at the end also. Because each of those railroad crossings will be constructed separately, so this will be the connecting piece. This project design scope is $246,000 to work through the concept, and this also is within the funds that are available through your 2019 county bond program.
Anybody have any questions? Next on the agenda is 9.3, discuss bids on 3 project package. Is this going to be utilities, Mike? Oh, Chris.
Yes, Mike was supposed to be here. He's at Elmo board meeting right now. So it was a timing issue.
Okay.
So I won the lottery again. So, council, I bring to you here today some drainage projects. So this is going to be some fun ones. I know that each one of you have a vested interest in this. So what I want to do first is go to page 114. Oh, you changed it back again. Go 2 more pages over to the chart. One more, right there. So let me give you a little brief history real quick of what you're looking at here on the screen in front of us. We had 3 projects, and as we initially went out, we went out for the Stallings bid for the drainage on that area. And the first time you recall, we got no bids. And then we went out again in the second bid, and we got 1 entry response from Hutchinson, and it came in at $1 million, $54,000. And that was much more higher than our engineering estimate was. But as you recall, I brought it to you and we rejected that bid. So we combined some projects, and what we did is we went out and we brought 3 projects together. And the main project is the Eastmore Water Line. That's the base bid project, and then the other 2 was alternates. We made them as alternates so we could have the alternative with, if the bids were suffice and good, then we would entertain those bids. So as you see, in the third bid process, we had bids returned, and we only had 2 responses. And you see the process from there and go from there. So let me, now that you know the financial side of it, let me go to the next page. And this is the Stallings project. Basically, the scope of work in this project here is we're starting at the furthest end, the south end, and kind of moving northwest, northeast, so to speak. So we'll be starting at the back of the park and doing the drainage. And the drainage will go around the park and then a little bit up Runnels Street that you will see. So,
Reynolds.
Oh, there he is. Come on up.
Why am I doing this? Yeah, huh? Okay.
Come on up, McKester.
come on up. You know more about this than I do. The Stallings project I started, and Jeremy's taking it over, and we got several projects as well. Mike knows more about the water line side of it, and with the Stallings project, as we know, the original was huge when we were going all the way from the back end all the way to Mayfield, and it just became enormous, so we started breaking it down. Naturally, on the drainage project, you got to start at the rear so the water can actually have a place to go, and they'll have ditches and sidewalks. So the intent here is to get that water off the park area. The park will need to be addressed on down the road because it needs to actually be crowned. It is pretty flat, so it needs to have some more dirt work done, but that's down the road. What we can do initially is help mitigate the water and prevent it from going on to there as much as possible. So that's the issue on the Stallings. Next.
You may talk about the water.
Yeah, you talk about the water. It's your department. Okay.
This map covers the alternate bid, number one, that was for some water and sewer improvements at 6th and 7th Street. The driver for this is there are 3 lots that are developable, and we had different people over the years kind of say, hey, I'd like to build a house. This is different from other projects where somebody was looking to buy multiple lots and didn't have service. We have somebody who owns a lot and wants to build a house, and maybe somebody else that says, well, I don't have water and sewer in front of the lots. What is the process? So the discussions over the years was, you can have a pro rata extension where they can pay half of the cost. There's a city policy for that. But they said that makes it not doable, okay? So the idea behind all of this was, well, we could come in here and look at some options. We can put some water and sewer in these streets in 6th and 7th. We could provide service to these lots. And we could go ahead and close up some gaps to where we could have some circulation in the water and so forth. So McManus Johnson looked at this and said, here's a couple options. We settled on this alignment, and we put it in the bid as an alternate because we had no idea what the cost was going to be. When I first looked at this a few years ago, I thought this might cost about $250,000, and the bid came in at $457,000, the low bid. And my recommendation, because we were not expecting that kind of cost increase and really didn't plan for the funding to spend nearly $500,000 to primarily develop 3 lots, I don't think that's a good expenditure of $450,000. That's my opinion. Then there are ways that we can break this up and do some lesser improvements and still provide some service to the lots, especially on 6th Street. And so I think it's a better use of some funds if we do that, and we look at that and we see if we can't provide service to a couple of these lots, not the full scope that this bid included. Okay, so the recommendation is we don't want to award the alternate 1 bid just simply because of funding and costs. Costs are high, and they seem to keep going up. The East Moore was the same situation. The estimate several months ago was around $1.2 million, and the low bid came in at 1.5 something. And I'm sorry, I don't have the exact dollars in this package with me. Oh, there it is. No, it's Stallings. Sorry. So the difference in the difference in the East Moore bid can be covered through the CO 2023B, I believe it is, for the water improvements. We had several projects in there. There were estimates and on how the money would be required initially. And so there's basically the recommendation is we need to move forward with this and go ahead and spend the extra, $250,000, $300,000 difference. It's a little bit higher than expected, but it's 15 or 20%, and that basically pulls from other funding, but we're going to have to borrow some more money to fund some of those projects anyway, and we knew that when that 2023B was authorized. It's kind of a long explanation, but basically that's kind of my recommendation is to move forward with East Moore, hold off on 6th and 7th, and take a look at it a different way.
Mike, could you flip over to the East Moore map real quick? Or maybe Dawn.
This one.
There you go. Just visually speaking, let everybody know what roadways we're talking about from where to where.
Okay, this will pick up at North Blanche on the west side, and it goes all the way to Birch on the east, but there is a gap, so to speak, that's not included in this project because there's mains already there, okay? There was a project that was completed at Gardner. You can see the little, Gardner's Gardner's the street right there, kind of in the middle, going to the south. And you see that little offset in the pipe right there. That was done in a 2012 project as part of Gardner improvements, and it went across more with new pipe, and the pipe was shifted. You can see it was shifted off out of the westbound lane and moved over a little closer to the right-of-way line. So it's kind of in a parking lot over there, basically. And then we had a repair that was needed that picked up over in front of Hickory Roots and Pops. And so there's a section of that pipe from basically Gardner to where the drainage ditch comes through by Hickory Roots that has been replaced. And so the intent of this project is to go in, it's 12-inch. The existing 10-inch that's under paving needs to be moved. I'm guessing it's 70 years old, okay? It breaks periodically. It creates traffic disruptions and extensive repairs, and TxDOT's so happy with us when it occurs. And it's in our best interest to upsize that to a 12, and then so the whole intent is to kind of put this new alignment over closer to where you can see near Gardner, where it's a little bit to the north. And so we'll get it out of that lane of traffic, but stay within the TxDOT right-of-way, and they have signed off on this, okay? They're not forcing us outside of the right-of-way to require easements all the way down there, okay? So, which is a great thing. So we'll be able to work, if there's ever a problem with the main, we'll be able to work on it outside of the lane of traffic. And so this is, you can see the two links. That's why there's two different links, because there's about 400 feet of pipe that's already been replaced in two different projects. And so we've got about 2,200 feet of pipe. And like I said, we are definitely recommending to move forward and award this. So
the first section would be 600 feet, and the remainder section is the 1530.
it's approximately 1530,
Okay.
yes.
And we're gonna upsize to a 10-inch?
It's from a 10-inch to a 12-inch.
Okay.
Yes, we'll be upsizing. And the other thing that it does include in the plans is there's not a lot of fire hydrants along this section. And so it includes installing fire hydrants on both the north and the south. So there's about 4 or 5 hydrants that will have boring underneath East Moore, and we'll set a hydrant on the south side to provide better fire protection for the businesses over there on the south side of Moore.
What kind of time frame are you looking at?
I believe it's about an 8-month contract.
And the bid on that one was?
It was the low bid was $1,586,883.50. To Jeske, yes, I'm sorry, yes, to Jeske. And Jeske's the same contractor that did the Boone Street.
So we've had relationships.
So we have experience with them. They did a pretty good job for us over there, and we expect the same here.
All right,
Yes.
anybody have any questions for McKeska?
When you do this type of work, how long do you expect this to work? I mean, is it gonna be like good for 50 years, 100 years, just based on your expertise?
Yes, over 50 to 75 years, yes. That's the expectation with putting in the PVC pipe these days. We don't expect to have the same kind of problems that we have with the cast iron pipe that's already over 50 years old, so, yes.
Do you pull that cast iron out? Are you replacing?
We will abandon, the plan is
Just
to
leave it
abandon that and leave it under the lane of traffic, because we don't want to go in there and rip up the lane of traffic all the way down.
Okay.
Okay, so yes, it'll be abandoned in place.
Okay.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Mike, thank you, and Chris. So the Stallings Park drainage improvements, those will be paid out of the Stallings addition. Micah, just help me think here of that correct fund name. Stallings addition.
Stallings
Fund.
Improvement Fund?
Stallings Improvement Fund.
Can I clarify that also, though? So that's a great point. The Stallings Improvement Fund is getting close to the end of its pile of money. And in order to pay for this project, what I'm recommending is that about $525,000 of that price comes out of the Stallings Improvement Fund, and then the remainder portion of that comes out of the Public-Private Partnership Fund.
And the Eastmore 12-inch water line, that will be paid out of a current CO.
Current CO that was closed in February or March, I believe, 2023B, I believe, is the number. We had 2023A and B. One was for wastewater, one was for water. And I believe it's 2023B.
And those are both recommended of awarding to the Jeske Construction Company.
Yes, yes.
In the 6th and 7th Street water project, you said you just don't think it's smart financially. With that being said, are the other water lines okay when you look at those streets, when we look at the condition of them? I know you said there's 2 or 3 lots that don't have service, but when we look at the entirety of those 2 streets, can we get more out of that by fixing them, or is how's the infrastructure under there?
6th Street does not have water and sewer in it. So the lots on Main Street are served from Main, and then the lots on Lawrence, I believe it is, are served there. So those corner lots have service off of the other streets, but there's nothing in 6th Street is why those 2 lots in the middle aren't served. 7th Street there's some water in there, but it comes, if I remember right, it comes off of Main and then just dead ends. It's not the entire block, but again, it's enough to serve the corner lots, but it's not enough for that one lot in the middle of the block. And again, I'm not saying let's abandon this completely. I just think there may be better uses of the money and the cost if we kind of do it in stages, okay? And we provide some service. We don't necessarily have to put in 8-inch pipe, for instance, if you're going to focus on serving a couple of lots. You could do it differently, so, okay.
Mike, I do have an additional question for the Stallings Park drainage improvements. We have an item, in the schedule, line 31, there's a chain link fence removal and relocation. Do we know where that would occur, or are we just adding a fence?
What I recall is on the northeast side of Runnels, north side of Runnels, I guess. There's a section in there that there's some fence that's not too far off of the existing drainage ditch. I believe this was put in, if nothing else, as a contingency, because at one point the plan was to, this has been going through different iterations, to try to just leave open drainage. And the problem with that is when you try to slope it to where you can maintain it, you widen the ditch and then be able to maintain it, well, then you go back further and you end up getting right at a fence that either has to be removed or shifted, or it may be in the right-of-way, actually, as well.
Well, our ditches are going from a narrow ditch to more of a 3-to-1 slope, so we're having a wider path through there, so there's some fences gonna have to be moved and relocated.
So one of the reason I was asking was, because I assumed it was for a private property than the park property, and at the same time, if we have, if this project would allow for some sort of fencing or barrier, when I'm looking at if I'm standing at Runnels looking towards the park, on the bottom right corner, there is a house right next door, and we have found that kids are kids. Kids play sports, and because in that corner there's empty field, or there's it's just grass, because to the left of that area is a playground, but so in that open space, We do have adolescents, maybe even some adults that may play sports there. And so sometimes we find that they're not intending to kind of cross over into the neighbor's yard, but we've had that happen from what I've been told a couple of times. So that's where I was wondering if there was anything in this bid that would allow for
That was not the
a
intent.
barrier.
The intent was to deal with any existing fences that were private, but that were in conflict and needed to be relocated and replaced, be temporarily removed and replaced because they're in conflict, or potentially they're in existing right-of-way, and we actually have the right to, we'll go ahead and put them, move them, shift them back a little bit. But that house you're talking about, that is not included to go in there. I mean, we wouldn't typically go in there and build a private fence,
No.
to separate something,
barrier
okay?
Yeah, so
For the
it-
park, but it sounds like this isn't the item to
That's
have my
not the
grievance
intent.
mentioned.
Not the intent.
Can I say that the right place to slot that concern would be to let me and Glenn sit down and say, do we have enough money in the park dedication fund where any land dedication monies that might have come into that park dedication fund, do we have enough money in there to do something that would help with screening that location? And it may be relatively minor, so let me and Glenn go look at that and see if there's another fund that we can just make that a expense that we can take care of.
I appreciate y'all noting my grievance and allowing for
Okay.
that time. But overall, excited to help move, both projects forward. But I'm sure Stallings Addition neighbors will be extremely happy for that specific project. And I'm ready to make the motion if there's no additional questions.
Where's the discussion, so it'll come back to us.
It'll be next week, yeah.
This is one of those I wish we had kept as a.
Yeah, that will come back to us next Tuesday?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is 9.4, discuss upcoming public hearing on the proposed 2023 tax rate for
Mayor-
the city of Terrell.
Mayor and
Mr.
council,
Sims?
yep, we're going to do a series of these that are essentially taking a quick preview at, and I really wanted to have you have a copy of it this time around to take a look at what's actually getting voted on next week. So as you've been seeing, really since we started working on this as part of the three-year strategic plan way back at the beginning of this calendar year, and then through your budget retreat, trying to land all of that information to a vote that happens next week. So, Dawn, if you'll go to the page that shows ordinance 3002, then here's the, there it is. So this is the ordinance that will be for discuss and consider next week whenever we're going forward to vote on the tax rate. So it's just there for discussion this time. I wanted you to be able to see it. I wanted it in your packet this time around so that you can pull it up and say, okay, this is what it's going to be. If you flip one page, you can see that at the very top of the page there, it's showing you the exact two numbers that I've been stating to you for a while. So that's that 6142 for maintenance operation into the general fund, and it's the 0.15 going into the interest and sinking fund. That's the exact tax rate we have today, and it would continue that tax rate moving forward into next year. So that's the tax rate ordinance, and it's really just an opportunity for you to see it again and see the language of the ordinance before we have to vote on it next week.
So I'm showing a resolution 2086. Is that the one we're talking about?
No, it's below.
You got to flip a couple of pages.
It's the second one down.
I don't have it.
It's on, go back to your agenda now.
Oh, you
Okay,
did.
yeah,
Oh.
if you already downloaded it, you may have to
Oh, that's
refresh
okay.
it,
All right,
download it
got it.
again,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
yeah, it's on your computer screen, but if you reload your packet electronically, you'll get it. Yeah.
Okay, and this will come back when, next Tuesday?
This is next Tuesday,
All right.
yep.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Sims? Okay, next on the agenda is 9.5. Greg?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. For discussion only, we will discuss the upcoming public hearing to consider an ordinance levying assessments on property located within the Market Center Public Improvement District. Crossroads Center Public Improvement District, 9th Street Residential Partnership Capital Public Improvement District, 9th Street Residential Partnership Maintenance and Public Improvement District, and Crossroads Northwest City of Terrell Public Improvement District.
Mr. Sims.
So, Mayor and Council, this one is similar. It's really here so you can see what's happening next time around. So if you'll pause right there, Don, sorry, on the map. So let's just walk through these. The plain blue one, where that 20 symbol is, that's your Market Center Public Improvement District, and that's the properties where the drainage goes into the pond that's visually kind of right behind Buc-ee's, and there's a series of other underground drainage structures in that area that we take care of using the Market Center PID. The next one is the one that's red here, and that's the Crossroads Center one, and that takes care of the pond that you would think of being closest to Interstate 20. Then the one that's hatched is going to be PID number 5. That's the Crossroads Northwest Public Improvement District. That takes care of all of the folks that drain into the larger pond, the pond that has the hiking trail around it, and that we've talked several times about the new apartment complex going in. We'll have a nice little entryway over into that pond. So that one sets the drainage maintenance associated with that particular public improvement district. Up on the north side of this map, you can see the, you might call it the Creekside area, you might call it the 9th Street Partnership one. PID number 3 is the Capital Public Improvement District that helps collect money for the eventual extension of 9th Street, and the maintenance one is PID number 4, and that's the exact same geographic area. They're both on top of the same area, so that's that overlay up on that little zone right there, and that's the new portions of Creekside not the older ones that have been there for many years, but the ones that just started building a couple of years ago. Those are the homes that pay into those two public improvement districts. So you can just stay on this one, Dawn, but what you're going to see in your agenda next time, and if you reload your packet, you'll see it in your electronic file this time around. You're actually going to have votes on 5 different ordinances, because each of these gets its own ordinance to set its own tax rate. So there'll be an ordinance 312, 313, 314, 315, and 316, and they're all in that newly uploaded version. Again, just so you can see this week what it is that you'll be on for voting on next week. All of the public improvement districts were done by voluntary petition of the landowner, the original developer of the land. There's a real estate disclosure that goes to every single buyer so they know what they've bought into and that there is a public improvement district on there. The assessments are all calculated based on state law and based on what's in the petition. So we always include those petitions. If you want to study through all those petitions, they're included in the packet. And basically, we're doing a little calculation on the first two, PID 1 and PID 2, that says, hey, the expenses of maintaining those 2 drainage ponds is such and such, and therefore, based on the amount of parking lot or building space you have, you pay into maintaining that public improvement district. On PID 3 and PID 4, it's just based on a assessment, so there's a 1 cent assessment for both of those, and then there's a 3.75 cent assessment associated with PID number 5. And again, all of those are just based off of the original setting up those public improvement districts. So that's kind of a quick overview, but there's a lot of detail in those. I didn't want to bore you with all of it, but I did want to get it into your packet. So again, if you refresh it, you'll see it, and then all of those ordinances are there for you to go ahead and take a look at.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Next on the agenda is 9.6. Greg?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we bring to you for discussion only 9.6, upcoming public hearing to receive public comment regarding amending Appendix 1, fee schedule of the City of Terrell Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 12, Utilities, Section 17, Municipal Stormwater Utility System, amending Section 17-9, Municipal Stormwater Utility Fee Schedule, establishing a municipal stormwater utility fee exemptions and credits, amending Section 27, Water Service Rates and Charges, paragraphs 1 through 4, and amending Section 28, sewer service rates and charges, paragraph 1 of the City of Terrell Code of Ordinances.
Okay, Mr. Sims.
Okay, so this time around, it's basically the same idea, but what we're doing is the resolution calling the public hearing is called a public hearing for next week, and on that public hearing, we'll be able to take comments, and it's actually taking comments on what turns out to be 3 different ordinances. And you don't have to flip through them, Dawn, but it's going to be ordinance 3003, which is the one related to stormwater. It's going to be ordinance 3009, which is the water and sewer rate. And it's going to be ordinance 3010, which is the one related to the water and sewer fees. So all of this is material that you've been looking at since the budget retreat in early August. And I would say, in summary, we have no change to that you haven't heard already, except for one, and that is if you flip one page in Ordinance 3003, our original suggestion was to try to get ready for some of our future major capital projects in the stormwater program by going ahead and locking in a multi-year increase in the stormwater rate. As we studied that as staff, we really came back around with the idea that we'd really like to see the performance of the fund with this new $10.65 per residential unit effective October 1, 2023. So that's a $1 increase. We had originally talked about going not just to $10.65, but phasing in an increase all the way up to $13.65. I'd say I'd like to pause that suggestion and not bring that forward right now, but rather spend the next year studying those numbers a little bit more and not locking in any set schedule for those increases over the next year. So we're going to kind of be a little bit slower with those increases in the stormwater fund and monitor that a little bit more. We have a little bit of time to do that since we'll be studying our engineering, and we have some engineering contracts in this year's budget related to stormwater to do those those larger capital projects. So that's the change. What you'll find in the other 2 ordinances is effectively unchanged since the last time we talked about that. Remember, we had a lot of discussion about, gosh, are we really going to have to do an 8.5-cent increase on the water side? We ended up coming back around and really only being able to polish that down to an 8.25% increase in the water side. We did try to get it lower, but we really are faced with a pretty meaningful increase from North Texas Municipal Water District this year, and we just needed to go ahead and get that managed through. So, and you saw that at one of your previous council meetings. There are a lot of details in the wording of ordinances 303, 309, and 310. So again, I wanted to go ahead and get them into the packet, and kudos to Dawn and to Mike McCusker for helping out with getting these ready, not just for next week, but ready for today, so you can see them ahead of next week's public hearings and next week's vote.
All right, so we'll do public hearing and then vote on them.
Yes, sir.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Sims on that?
I just want to clarify, so that locking that rate in where we're going up $1 each year, that's out now, we're going to watch it a little more?
Yes, ma'am.
I like that. And, I mean, I don't know who this question I should direct it to, but is there anything we can do to try to get a handle on some of these rates? I mean, I don't know if we not doing enough for the projects to try to update some of our infrastructure. I don't know if we're shifting the money to the wrong place. I don't know, but I plan to be around a few years, and I sure would like to help make a decision now that's gonna help control these rates. And when I look at kind of surrounding areas, oh my goodness, I just wanna make sure we're doing the right thing, we're making the right decisions. But I don't know who should answer that question. Is there anything we can do or need to be doing to try to help manage the rates?
I think maybe the best answer staff can provide on that is to say that, you know, we are very mindful of the fact that we are trying to balance the question of a rate increase can deliver things that we get asked to do a lot. So stormwater is a classic one. It is very easy to go around the city and see drainage needs It could be open ditch drainage on a roadway. It could be a area that floods on a regular basis. It could be an area where you know, you've got a set of houses, and in between a set of houses, you wouldn't believe how much water flows through the property. So we're mindful of that. We know that we have a council directive with a $60 million set of drainage needs from our recent drainage study. And what we're trying to do as staff is to balance, well, how quickly we can deliver the improvements versus keeping the rates at a reasonable level. And so my comment to you is, I hear what you're saying. What you said is part of why we decided, you know what, let's not do a automatic set of increases in stormwater. Let's just pause, let's do the one, and then let's hold that and just keep analyzing it and keep analyzing and keep trying to beat that up and keep that as low as possible. Go ahead.
So,
Yeah.
Mike, so our need for these rate increases might be mitigated potentially by new developments that could occur in the next year, 2 years, potentially, correct?
Yeah, I think that's part of what I'd like to watch, is to say, well, gosh, if 2 or 3 things open up that start paying meaningful dollar amounts into the stormwater fund, maybe that helps us to not have to be as aggressive on the fees, because some of those new developments will be new ratepayers, and those new ratepayers will contribute to the fund, and maybe that gets us a little closer to being able to accomplish our drainage projects without increasing the rate. That's exactly the idea.
And so when these new developments come in to play, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, are the current, you know, sort of larger developments that exist as of today, are they paying a larger share or a significant share of what we're currently spending on stormwater?
So, yeah, the state law involved in this topic is, and the reason we have this really clunky phrase of residential unit is to say, okay, your average house is this much driveway, this much roof, that's impervious surface. And so therefore, if you look at that much impervious surface, something that can't percolate into the ground, right, it's not grass, and then I translate that to a film alley, or I translate that to a new industrial building that might get built somewhere, I'm actually multiplying that $10.65 by, you know, sometimes 300 or 400, because that's how many equivalent residential houses there are out there. And so the big ratepayers on our stormwater side are the bigger businesses, and as we have some of those new big businesses come in, then they can provide a substantial dollar amount to some of this over the course of time.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I'm asking is because I just want to make sure that, you know, say I live over on, you know, Blanche or something, I'm gonna live in a house, and is my rate, is my rate going up because I'm also paying for the stormwater needs of, like, you know, Buc-ee's and all these big developments coming in? Or are they basically sort of, they're currently paying their fair share and substantially more than?
Well, yeah, I would say they're, you know, by state law, they're paying their fair share, because what's happening is, you know, Buc-ee's is going to be paying, I won't remember it off the top of my head, but they're going to be paying in the low thousands per month. A Walmart distribution center is going to be paying, you know, in the high tens of thousands per month. And so they're handling their rate payments. They're making those payments. A new business that comes to town makes their payments. They carry their fair share. And the money that a residential person pays into it is designed to be proportional to the amount that their one house contributes to stormwater runoff in the city. So there's a whole series of calculations that go into it. And so there's no such thing as, oh, we took money from a house and we helped Buc-ee's build a drainage system. That can just simply never happen.
Sure.
And it's interesting, and it's part of why we adopt all of this all in one big meeting, because think about your public improvement districts. That's your new folks paying their fair share by, yes, they're also going to maintain the wetland, maintain the drainage system, maintain the pond. They have big ponds that have big expenses. They pay for that, and they pay their wastewater charges. It's also important to note that our airport pays the same thing. So The ratepayers of hangars out at the airport, they've got to be paying enough so that the airport can pay the highest stormwater bill in the city of Terrell, because there's more pavement at the airport than anywhere else in the city of Terrell.
I remember that pie chart. The reason I ask is the kinds of questions I get from constituents is how can our stormwater fee be going up, and we have all these new developments paying all this additional money in. So just want to make sure everybody understands kind of how that's all working. It's not that they are paying a substantial amount currently. It's not that it's going up because anyone's being asked to do anything unfair currently.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, I sometimes will describe it this way. It may not be the best description. What I would say to a lot of folks is we're an 1873 community, and we're an 1873 community that, frankly, for a very long time in our history, didn't have a lot of money. And that means that we've got a lot of broken drainage and a lot of drainage that wasn't designed by city councils in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s that had a lot of money. We have a lot of drainage that was designed by city councils that didn't have very much money when they were designing it, and consequently, you've inherited more problems than a lot of other cities. We're embarking on this course of, well, how do we fix that? How do we make it better? And it is going to be the forever challenge of the Terrell City Council to figure out what's the balance between the rates you pay and the speed at which we fix some of these older drainage problems.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
So, Mike, make sure I understand this correctly. The stormwater fee is $9.65 right now, and it's going up by $1 to $10.65, and we're not locking in any additional increases
Yes,
for the
ma'am.
time being. Okay. And then I would love to have Mike McKeska answer a question for
Oh,
me,
this is good.
because he did such a great job during the budget planning.
Mike, I'm going to take a drink of coffee now, and I'm going to
Like
sit
I'm
back
being
and enjoy
set
this
up,
answer.
Well, and it goes back to kind of Stephanie and Councilmember Home Thomas and Ann Hill Robeson's question about closing up. We can practice after the meeting, the last name. But the storm, since we're talking about stormwater, right? Stormwater rate model. How is that in I know you could probably go on quite a bit about how the rate model is calculated. What is the easiest way for us to understand the stormwater rate model?
There's not an actual model. I mean, as in like for a utility budget rate model, there's not a stormwater rate model exactly. Because then the difference is utility money, whatever that rates are set for the revenue in the utility is to pay for services for water and sewer, your capital costs, your construction, your design, your operations, and services provided from other departments. So those are all built into a rate model for water and sewer rates. Stormwater is different. Stormwater is based on, like Mike said, the equivalent residential unit. And so when this was developed, consultant took a look at it, studied a bunch of different homes just across town and said, what's the average impervious area? 4,100 square feet is what they came up with. So what rate are you going to charge in the stormwater fund is basically saying, I know I have needs. If I can't fund everything through the general fund, then the stormwater fee allows a mechanism to have a stormwater fund. When I say general fund, through the general fund for stormwater improvements, okay? That's why you have a stormwater fund. You help offset that money that could be spent from the general fund. You can't do that with a utility, but you can do that with stormwater. You pay for it out of general fund revenue, you pay for it out of stormwater fund revenue. So what's the balance? What's your needs and what's the balance? How much money do you want to raise? And when you set it and you structure it on an ERU, like Mike shared, some of the businesses pay a lot because for every, if it's 41, per 4,100 square feet, you have 41,000 square feet, you're paying 10 times 1065. Okay? So it's over $100 a month, not $10.65 a month. If you have 100,000 square feet, well, it's that much more, okay? Because it's based on per ERU. So you take the square footage, you divide it by 4,100, square footage of impervious area, you divide it by 4,100, and you come up with X number of ERUs, and you multiply that by the rate, 965, 1065, whatever. And that's where it gets pretty expensive. Now, and again, there's not, that is totally, in my view, it's based on where do you want to get your revenue for drainage improvements to come from? It can come from stormwater revenue, stormwater fees. In general fund can pay for that too. You're not locked into, if you have $2 million coming in stormwater fund, that is absolutely all the money you can spend on drainage because you can pay for it out of the general fund. But you have plenty of needs in the general fund, so it's a balancing act, okay?
Maybe my memory is a little blurry here. Maybe I was thinking about the water sewer model.
Okay.
The explanation that you provided there compared to the stormwater, right? I better understand the stormwater model thanks to what you just shared, but it's the water and sewer model that sounded like it has different variables, maybe a few more variables that make up that rating, rate increase. So if we were looking to maintain or reduce the overall rates that our customers get to see when they open up their stormwater sewer bill, then you might focus on how do you maintain or reduce or slow down the increase in the water and sewer rates while also keeping in consideration the different expenses and projects. Is that accurate?
The simple way to, you either reduce costs or you increase revenue. You have more customers or you have less cost. It's all going to meet in the middle on that rate. How do you balance that? With North Texas, North Texas rate alone is going to hit us at $500,000 plus every year for the next few years. Okay, and we don't have an option in that. And so, that alone, if they go up 10%, 12%, I believe the projection next year is 13. I think, if I remember right. We're going to have just to offset that with our current customer base is about a 6% increase on our side. Ballpark, we're at about half to make up that revenue. And depending on how many customers we have, it changes a little bit. So if we add 500 homes and we can add $25,000, $30,000 a month in revenue off of 500 new homes, well, that helps. See, one apartment complex, I think I shared this previously, is water and sewer revenue off of a 300-unit apartment complex is over $200,000 a year. Mm-hmm. That helps. Now, we don't want apartments, obviously, everywhere, but I'm just, depending on the user, you can have fairly significant revenue increases, which will help. And the other side of that on the expense is we've talked about with this growth, how do you prepare? You have to be prepared for the growth, and 100% of the cost is not going to be on a developer, and 100% hopefully is not on the city, but you have to spend that money to get prepared for the growth. And then when the growth happens, you've incurred a lot of those costs, and the hope and the expectation, I would say, the expectation is that your rates will start settling out. Now, how much, it's going to depend on North Texas a lot. It's going to depend on how much growth we have.
Yeah. Let me make a comment real quick on historically, the city of Terrell, when you look at the revenue from these funds, would you say we've been low, mid-range? And then for a long time, we didn't have any, right? Am I correct on that?
Strictly
So we're
speaking,
trying to-
speaking about stormwater, yes.
Yeah, so we're
Oh,
playing
I'm sorry.
catch-up, right?
Stormwater, yes.
Had we been over those years, and I'm not blaming anybody because they made reasons, and this is kind of why we've got tough decision, is because had they been raising the revenue then, dollar for dollar, what you got back then versus what we've got, we would be in better shape, I think, in some of these areas.
On the stormwater side, I believe the initial recommendation, this is before my time, but I believe the initial recommendation was to start at somewhere around $3 or $4 per ERU, and council voted for $1, and it stayed at $1 for years. And so when when the needs were looked at 12 years ago, it was like, you really need to be at $3 or $4 to start raising money to address some needs. Well, that was kind of perceived to be a big hit. And it's like, no, let's start at $1. And then it increased, obviously, since then to $9.65. But yeah, we were way on the low end when you compare to other cities. For years, we were way down there on the low end. And then we started shifting up, and now we're on the, we're closer to the higher end of that.
So what I would tell you is that we're kind of in this growth period where we're going to experience growing pains, as all municipalities have. But once we get the customers that we need, then that's going to help us address a lot of this. Because you got more customers, you got more revenue, and then you're in a better shape as you move forward. So that's the conundrum that we find ourselves in, is we have to raise the revenue to keep up with inflation and keep up with
prepared for the growth.
Yeah, and prepare
Yes,
for the
sir.
growth. But
Yes, sir.
we have needs today because of the old infrastructure. And so it's a tough, I hear everybody's concern, and I agree with you, but, these are the tough decisions we have to make sometimes.
So quick point, and,
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Go ahead.
quick point, not to beat this one to death, but, because we do know that we're kind of behind the 8 ball with regard to drainage. We have an older community, have a lot of issues that have been lingering, neglected for years, those kinds of things. Have we considered, this is maybe a question for Mike, any sort of, creative methods of funding, like, it kind of falls in the same category, streets in a lot of ways, that has kind of been, set aside for a while and not addressed maybe the way it could have been in previous councils or, throughout the years. But have we considered potentially maybe doing something like the proposition where you, just to get us caught up, the proposition where you sort of go, you lower the sales tax, kind of create like a, add that additional sales tax like you do with the paddock or you do with the EDC to kind of to fund it in a creative way, or have we thought of any other potential ideas?
No,
like
it's
establishing
a great
drainage
question.
board or,
So all 4 of your tax increment refinance districts were created so that drainage projects could be funded in those tax increment refinance zones. The TERS this year, their budget will include $450,000 that gets transferred over to help the study related to the Rochester drainage project, right? So, and then it's done drainage projects before, and I assume it will do some additional drainage projects in the future. So that's a avenue. I would say that the public improvement districts are a useful tool because they help you maintain drainage areas. And I just think it's going to continue to be mixed. There's not, strictly speaking, a sales tax option for us to go for there, but we'll keep working on through public improvement districts, tax increment refinance zones. Those are options that I think are very helpful. And then I'm going to agree with, if you step back for it for a minute and you say to yourself, okay, if we do a round of street projects, how much drainage do you want to put into each individual street project, right? So I use this example several different times. I'm just going to keep beating this example up. Daniels between Polk and Pinkston. Very rough road right now. Definitely a red failed street. One option for council, and you guys will make this decision in the next few months, right? Do you want to address Pinkston by doing pavement only, or do you want to address, do you want to address Polk by, man, I'm getting myself tangled up here. Do you want to address Daniels between Polk and Pinkston by doing only the pavement? Or do you want to address it by doing the stormwater plus the pavement? And you want to put pipes underground, have a standard issue curb and gutter section in Daniels from Polk to Pinkston? Well, we're going to bring you that decision here soon. And if you do that, that means that whenever you build roads, we're talking about trying to do a $12 million worth of roads here in the next 15 months. If we do $12 million worth of roads, and every single one of them we include 100% stormwater fix in it, then it's going to make it a little bit easier on your stormwater fund over time, but it means that you're going to deliver fewer roads, right? Because you would have shifted that money from strictly the street to the street plus the drainage. I want you to see that decision-making, and I'm going to get you involved in that policy discussion so that you can look at that over the next year and make that decision. But each of these is just a series of balancing acts. We'll bring you the TERS decisions, and you can make a decision there about where to direct some of those tax increment refinance zone funds. But yes, we're committed to trying to find creativity whenever we can, and if we've got any creative solutions, then that's what we're tasked with, and we'll try to come up with some.
Now, is it sensible to think that if there's not a lot of rain, the storm water fees might be less? Or am I crazy? Not really? They gonna charge the same regardless because we got these many customers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a good question.
the challenge with the, maybe philosophically with stormwater is what storm are you gonna design for? How much potential flood risk are you willing to take? You know, and our current standard is a 100-year design storm. It doesn't rain like that very often. When it does, you can have pretty significant problems. So, but that also causes you, when you're planning and designing and building, you're gonna put larger things in the ground than if you design on a lesser storm, but then your risk factor goes up. And so all of these things come into play on that. But the stormwater fee doesn't change in a dry period versus a wet period. Okay, that's not now the other thing about funding or other sources, we mentioned this before about grants, and we've tried. There's not a lot of options on grants out there. Some of the ones that we've attempted, we have been denied. We've submitted on at least three, maybe four, the last several years. You get into hazard mitigation grants, and what happens is a hurricane comes up from the Gulf, and all the money goes south of here because they have different needs than what we have right here locally. And so the money dries up. There's just no opportunities that we found. And we've applied for about $8 or $10 million worth of grants and been told no each time. Just didn't make the cut or whatever. Other priorities statewide. And so
We won't give up trying.
no, we can, as long as there's an opportunity out there, we can try. And then, you know, and our grant partners, they know if we think we've got a pretty good shot, they're looking for things for us, you know, the public management, Incs of the world, you know, those firms, that's their business. And they're helping us as much as they can. We haven't been successful on the stormwater side.
So by getting more growth, it's putting more people in the pot, so that decreases the number because we get this new.
Increase your
development.
revenue. Yeah.
That's additional revenue.
You can
so it
maintain
helps.
your rates, but you still have that monthly
Got more
income.
people paying.
Yes, you have more people paying. That's, you know,
Gotcha.
hopefully we can
I
keep
just
the
want to
rates.
clarify this, like the TERS, Mike brought that up. We just got to make sure that we're using TERS. I think some of these projects could be fixed with the TERS money, and it's not just in a certain area. I think we can use this throughout the city.
With
That's on us. We got to just think about that stuff, because when we use it in a centralized area, we make that place perfect and beautiful and spend $1 million or $2. But the other places, because I think about Daniel Street, it is horrible in certain areas. And man, if we could fix 300, 400 feet of that street, it'll change it. And when you think about 1.4 million or 2 million or whatever, it would make a difference. But some of that's on us as council members, because when I look at the TERS funding and where some of that's going, we could be using it in different areas to minimize some of this for our citizens and for us, if we're gonna stay here, not to be selfish, but we just have to think on that because we're guilty. I am too.
I think with the creation of the new TERS, once growth starts really occurring in those areas, there should be opportunities, but it's not gonna happen in the next couple of years. It's gonna take years before revenue really starts coming in, because you have to have some homes and things built, and it's gonna take years to get there, so. But the good thing is it's planned. The developments are planned. If they get moving and keep moving, then there'll be opportunities, I think, down the road.
Okay.
Anything else?
All right, thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Next on the agenda is,
9.7,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor. 9.7 is to discuss upcoming public hearing to consider approval of the proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 budget for the city of Terrell, Texas.
So Mayor and Council, this one's a little more straightforward because this is just going to be ordinance 3011. Again, there's a copy available for you there. The big highlight here is that some of the sharp-eyed amongst us noticed the finance department wheeling a cart through the lobby earlier. And that was updated budget books, and I would just invite you to pick up a copy of an updated budget book if you'd like to take a look at any details there. We have been doing our own quality control on the budget, and that's available for you to take a look at. But same report I had last times in terms of some of these policy details. All of the February 1st increase in the fire department is in there. Some of the other sort of last-minute requests that were asked for are in the budget. So I won't belabor that point other than to say I think I've got you to where you asked me to get you on the major budget items.
all right, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Sims? Next item on the agenda?
Is 9.8, Mr. Mayor, to discuss updates to the employee handbook.
All right, Mr. Sims.
So on this one, I am going to go through a PowerPoint, and so she's going to have to go through all of this entire wonderful thing here real quick. And I'm going to tell you, Dawn, I think that you want to be on agenda item page 280. 284, thanks, yeah. If you give me that page 284, there we go. Okay, so let's go through what's in the handbook update, and so we'll do that real fast. This is the PowerPoint slide that I gave you on September 19th. These are the things that would be changing in the handbook. So let's go to the next page. And here you can see we had a little bit of discussion this at a previous meeting. We tried to go tackle this topic. I've got field training officer, current was 100. There was questions about, do we really want to go all the way up to 250? I'm going to show you a PowerPoint slide on that here in just 1 second. But that was one of the changes that had some discussion. And we also had what I considered to be a great suggestion about, what about our field crews? Could be streets, could be parks, could be water and sewer folks, could be somebody working on drainage. What can we do? And we decided that what we could come up with was something that we're going to nickname all hands field crew. So examples of this would be, what if I have a weather event where I go to all the field crews, as we do occasionally, and say, you're normally an 8 to 5 employee, but all hands on deck, we're going to work 12-hour shifts. Half the team, you're working from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Other than half of the team, you're working 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And we're going to do that for 2 weeks because we've got a weather emergency we're dealing with. We've got other things that might be special events, other emergency types. We can define that as all hands field crew. And we came up with a dollar amount of $300 per pay period associated with that. Doesn't happen as frequently as some of the other things that are on this page, but when it does happen, I think that's when the field crews are doing something extra special for us. I'd like to be able to provide them a $300 per pay period bonus or assignment pay, I should say, whenever that is something that they're dealing with. And I thought that was a great suggestion last time, so I tried to include it in the presentation this time around. The next PowerPoint slide is the study that we did through the police department on some of these other questions. So the question last time was, well, how different is 250 from what other departments are doing? So this is a little hard to read, so I'll kind of go through it. Rockwall, depending on who you are in their pay scale, you could be getting $254 or you could be getting $474 per pay period, effective only during training. Terrell PD, the suggestion was to move it to $100, and by the way, that field training is for police, fire, the paramedic side of fire as well, and 911 dispatch. So all of them get treated the same. And then Forney PD, again, depending on who you are in the pay scale, they go from 154 to 214. Greenville is 92 per pay period, but they're not doing it just during training, they're doing it year-round. So what that means is that, you know, say a field training officer for Terrell, they're on, quote, on doing the work for 6 months, they get $250 per pay period. A guy from Greenville is getting it for year-round for 92. So if you thought, well, wait a minute, how do I do that equivalently? Just double the Greenville number, right? So 184 is kind of what the Greenville guy is really netting if he were to getting paid the same way we do it. Mesquite PD goes from 102 to 160. Plano goes from 120. Rockwall County and Kaufman County are both on the year-round. So again, you kind of have to think about doubling these. So that'd be 141 for Rockwall, and it'd be 84 for Kaufman County. So I realize that puts us a little bit more on the high side, but that would be effective. If you go back one slide, if you don't mind, Don, going backwards one, no, whoop, there we go. Right now, that policy is in place today at $100, and it's effective for paramedic, police officer, firefighter. The policy change recommendation from staff is to include dispatch and change the number to $250. Of course, that's y'all's discretion, and my only comment is I hope that you'll think through it, give me some feedback between now and whenever we have the employee handbook on for a vote, and we'll be able to work through that process. So the next PowerPoint slide again, you've got that in your packet. You can look at that, study that, and if you'd like a change in it, I just need to get council feedback on that one. The next slide is the education certification pay. This one's unchanged from last time around. This seemed to be getting good support last time. Next PowerPoint slide is maternity policy. If you go close to the end here, I'm not going to review the current maternity policies again, but I do want to show you what we came up with. So pause, one more. Sorry, go forward again, forward. Okay, special parental leave policy is the recommendation that I'm going to bring to you, and this is the wording that we would suggest to use. I won't read it out to you, but basically the idea is let's just start this at 80 hours or 120 hours for on-shift firefighters. They have to be taken consecutively or non-consecutively in no less than 4-hour increments, must be taken within 12 months of birth or legal adoption of a child, and then it expires at the end of 12 months, doesn't accumulate or carry forward. And you got to use this stuff, go one more PowerPoint slide, you've got to use that before you start moving over to sick leave pool or over into unpaid FMLA time. So that's, you know, the management side of it. So I think I might have mentioned at a previous meeting when we surveyed, we found that a lot of the bigger cities, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, Houston, El Paso, all the big cities, Irving, Arlington, all of those already have this, and it's 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. A lot of the smaller cities haven't started adopting it, but my comment to you is we know we have a desire to be a family-friendly employer. We know that we want to attract a younger workforce, And this is part of a strategy to do that. So my suggestion is start us off with this policy, start it as 10 days, and work on it, manage it, look at it. If we want to increase it in the future, we can, but let's at least start small, because I think that's a nice thing to do for our employees. So those are the employee handbook-related things. I'm happy to take any council input on those.
Does anybody have any comments for Mr. Sims?
I mean, I think that was, oh, go ahead. I think that was just my concern earlier. It's good to see this comparison of this assignment pay, because when I looked at it, it was like, I get it. These people are important to our city and to every city, but I just didn't get the 150% raise. I mean, on this assignment pay. I mean, it's kind of just like spitting in the wind, and I don't want to be doing that. So I appreciate staff bringing this back to us. Now I have something visual. We at from $84 to $475. So that kind of gives me a better idea, so I can study that and see that. So thank you for that. Okay, now on the assignment pay for the all-hands fields crew, okay, does it have to be that extreme when you look at kind of how you explained it? Like, let's say if something happens, a major line breaks, and the staff is out all night, does this come in place, or does it have to be a bigger or more cumbersome, laborious problem for them to?
You hit exactly on the conversation we had internally, right? No offense to Mayor Carmona when I say this. One version of it was to say, well, gee, does it have to be as an extreme as the mayor called an emergency for the city? And we all looked at each other when we said that and said, no, that's probably a bad idea, right? Because the example that rings in my mind is what just went on in Forney. I mean, I don't mean to throw a sister city under the bus, but they really got close to losing water supply recently. And I can assure you that their field crew were all hand on deck, because they had a break that was maybe 72 straight hours of go handle those 2 breaks, or we got a huge problem. And to me, this is designed so that if that happens, and it's only for a short period of time, that means they're still eligible in that pay period for that $300 assignment pay. And so, yeah, I want to interpret this as you're saving us from boiling water. I need to give you assignment pay, yeah.
Mike, maybe we do need some very specific criteria for when this applies, in the ordinance, so we kind of really understand exactly when we're talking about this coming into play.
I would tell you that whenever we bring this to you for approval, and just to clarify, I have a lot of things on your agenda tonight that you're going to vote on next week. This I need you to vote on before November the 15th. So when I bring this back, it won't just be the version of it that fits on the PowerPoint slide. It'll be the slightly more detailed version of it, yeah. Okay.
Mike, in terms of the special parental leave policy, can you clarify does this policy only, and maybe let's back up, both the maternity leave policy and the parental?
Yeah,
I want to make sure that, where I'm alluding to is I want to make sure that we are treating all our staff, whether they are police, fire, non-civil, or civil and non-civil staff members, the same in terms of any parental leave policy that may apply to a male or a female looking to, right,
This is exactly the reason that the wording changes on the PowerPoint slide. Right now, we tend only to say maternity, but we apply it also to the man in the same situation. And I think that as we adopt an update, we just need to be calling it parental leave, because it's parental as in, birth of child, both sides of the family, and it's adoption of child, both sides. We need to be clear that both of those things are available. And so if you're I think we had a turn of phrase in here that was, I'm not sure I can find it real quick, but if you're in-house with the child, you're eligible, right? That's what we're looking for. You're an in-house caretaker of the birth or adopted child, and when you're doing that, then you're eligible.
And this does apply to both civil and non-civil employees. There's not more
Absolutely.
or less than either is receiving.
Right, that's correct. You just always have to make a allowance for the math of how you do on-shift firefighters so that you have the correct equivalency there. So 80 hours for a standard issue employee is equivalent to 10 days. And so you want to have 10 days in the firefighting world, and that's the reason that number is different there. It's a 10-day policy for both.
Perfect, thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Mike. And the numbers played out on the scale that we looked at.
I think so, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Would anybody care to pull either 10.1 or 10.2? Hearing none, we'll take on the consent agenda. Oh, yes.
Sorry, man, I'm not sure what's, is 10.1 or 10.2 the Sage Hill Parkway piece or not?
10.1 is the one that is the second reading on one of our zoning items, the PD, that was the Evotran and Rodeo PD that was approved unanimously last time around. That's a second reading. And then 10.2 is an administrative item related to, we're doing another public hearing related to that PACE program because there's a lot of PACE requirements. And we just thought we'd put both also on consent agenda because they're very straightforward.
Gotcha.
Okay. So we will consider the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion from Mayor Ronnie Velazquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3, a second from Phil Robinson, District 5, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous vote of those present. We're going to adjourn into executive session in accordance with Section 551 of the Texas Government Code to discuss the following. 1.074 personnel matters and Section 551.087 deliberations regarding economic development. We are now in executive session. Okay, here we go. We're going to reconvene into regular session and consider action, if any, on items discussed in executive session. Does anybody have a motion?
Motion to authorize the city manager to execute a development agreement for Clay Cooley Hyundai of Terrell.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion from Mayor Ronnie Velazquez, Mayor Pro Tem District 3, a second from Stephanie Holmes Thomas, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem District 4, authorizing our city manager to enter an agreement with Clay Cooley Hyundai. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries with unanimous vote of those present. We are adjourned.